Hey! Welcome to this episode of Black Beat Podcast. Hi, my name is John Washington, and I'm your host tonight. In this afternoon, and the morning, and forever. Hey, look here. On today's show, we have a guest that was here previously from time to time, my partner, Karanja Crews, teaching with purpose. And, man, I had such an opportunity. Karanja's this year, as you know, in previous years, Karanja tries to keep a cutting edge with his guest speakers on education and community and a variety of other topics. He's always bringing that top grade, top-notch talent to the front for us to all get an opportunity to grow from. Well, this year he happened to bring somebody special that come from my past, probably from all of our past, but I'm just dating myself right about that from my past. Dr. Angela Davis, that y'all might know, the civil rights activist, and yada yada. You can go on in days. We'll tell you about a little bit about her. But Karanja brought her as a keynote speaker this year to Teaching with Purpose. And I found it pretty interesting and exciting, actually, because I got a chance to interview at the end of the event. But she had made a few statements through that interview, sort of was something that I felt that we should build on. And she was talking a little bit about community education. And I was a little bit captured by that because I happen to have similar sentiments. I think that we invest, and I'm careful about how I phrase this because
don't be careful.
Don't be careful. Okay, well, I'm careful in the sense of its political notions because I don't want it to appear that I felt that all the resources that are invested in education has falling on deaf ears, because that's not what I'm saying. I think that there's a large amount of investment in education that I think is not properly guided or distributed in the directions in which I think it should be going. At least this is just my opinion.
Okay.
I think we overinvest in education because of what we perceive the perception of the impact is. But yet when we survey the land of the history of investment in education, I don't necessarily think that we've gotten our return on the dollar. You know, it's at least from the demographic of black folk when I'm thinking about it, man. So those are just some of my thoughts. I think that we're always coming at this thing as an investment reality through education, but yet I don't believe that we monitor the types of education that we're funding well enough to determine its impact, or if it's really having an effective impact on the demographics in which we're hoping to elevate. So anyway, this is some of my thoughts, man. But what's on your mind today, bro? It's good. I'm glad to hear you.
I mean, you hitting it hard.
Well, come on, man.
I agree with you. I definitely think there is not a return on our investment in terms of education. However, education has been underfunded according to the quality education model, which is a legislation that was passed in around, I think, 1999. And it's a model that is supposed to, all school districts, pretty much our state, is supposed to follow to fund our schools. And it's been underfunded since its conception and beginning of, of this legislation. But the return on investment, the ROI, what is the return of investment? But I want to know, tell me more about what Dr. Angela Davis was saying about the community education piece.
I think that she was, even though she's got her doctorates and all that, and she's a supporter of formalized education, I believe in her mind, she believed that there has to be an alliance of community along with the educational institution that is characterized or coined as education. In that the student themselves would probably benefit as much or not equally as the formalized institution is their participation with community and their ability to be involved in community engagement, community participation, and those types of things. And I thought that was really significant in terms of, similar to what Obama had talked about at some point about how students need to have a certain amount of community investment time before they get their degrees and stuff like that. Like, like white America does, send their students out on, what do they call them things, student exchanges and, venture quest and all that kind of stuff.
Right, absolutely. Community education, That's interesting. I did a post yesterday. You guys can follow me at Karanja Naumba, at Karanja Naumba on Instagram. And I did a post yesterday, and I broke down the economics of what's going on and why our teachers are striking right now. So what I broke down was I did my research, and I noticed that in order to live and be in a living wage, decent living wage here in Portland, Oregon, you have to be making over $50,000 a year.
Wow.
So from 0 to 49,000, if you have no children, you are basically living in poverty. If you are making 50,000 to 72,000, you are considered middle class. So what's happening right now and why the teachers are striking is because the beginning salary right now for a teacher is, I believe, 49 to 50,000. So if you look at the map, I mean, that's right on the borderline of poverty. Then I did another Google research, and I said, what is the average home price for Portland? And the average home price for Portland is $580,000. Okay, $580,000. Now, in order to qualify for a home, for a loan to get the home for $580,000, you have to be making $123,000. Okay, so what's happening right now, so let's say, a teacher even has 2 incomes in the house. So if they're making 50, their partner's making 50, that's still only 100,000. You're still short for even buying a home in Portland, Oregon. So the teachers are asking for a 23% increase because of inflation. As you know, we are in inflation right now. Gas is up, utilities are up, food is up. So they're asking for the 23% increase to handle the inflation that we are experiencing right now. So the 23% increase, for example, the starting salary could potentially be maybe 62,000, right? So that's a little bit more comfortable. However, and then if you times that by 2, if you have a partner, okay, you'd be able to buy a home. You have that 123,000. But here's the other kicker. If you look at the statistics, there's a lot of people moving out of Portland. A lot of people moving out of Multnomah County. A lot of people moving out of Oregon. And the reason why is because we are the highest tax city, second highest tax city in the nation. New York's number 1, Portland, and then San Francisco.
Wow. Well, see, that's some info that, that's so misinterpreted. So when you say we're the highest tax, one of the highest tax cities,
yes,
you're talking about real estate taxes, you're talking about
across the board. So if I'm
yeah.
making 123,000, which is the amount that I need to make in order to buy a home, I'm going to be taxed like the rich.
Yeah.
So what's happening right now is we're in some interesting times in terms of our economy. So I wanted to ask you in terms of like how we tie into this community education, because I felt like my post when I broke everything down, I had a little diagram. That was community education to me. And then I even broke down today. I broke down the standards, the social studies standards for kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And if you look at the social studies standards from kindergarten to 12th grade, there's an economic standard. There's a little small piece for economics, and I was like, interesting. I looked at the standard, and in kindergarten is supposed to distinguish between wants and needs. And then I looked at the 4th grade standards, which hit it on the nail in terms of what my presentation was. The name of my presentation was called Cream. Cash rules everything around me. Cream is the money. Dollar dollar bill, y'all. Shout out to Wu-Tang. So I was like, okay. So if you look at the 4th grade standard, right? The 4th grade standard is states here. Let me show you here. I was like, wow. I mean, that's pretty much hit it on the nail right here. The 4th grade standard for economics, it says analyze how wealth and scarcity connects to personal, community, regional, and rural resources. So analyze. So I encourage all of our parents out there, as we're homeschooling right now because teachers are striking, rightfully so, is to have these type of conversations. We need to start talking about economics. Economics. Look, why are teachers striking? At the bottom line, the reason why teachers are striking is because of the dollar bill. It's cream.
But Cruz, there's a mixed opinion about that. I mean, historically, one of the negatives or the derogatory was that the teachers union is one of the strongest powerful unions in the state, in that they've always seemed to got their way doing what they wanted, but then when we look at the education numbers and those things, and when it looks at BIPOC communities and those types of things, we still are struggling to maintain, those. So that was one response to it, but I do agree and understand what this inflation is doing to people and the things in which, in terms of home ownership and the ability to have upward mobility. Okay, but I think your thoughts about this whole, when I was thinking about when you were reading those numbers off, man, I was thinking about then our small black businesses, our BIPOC businesses in our district at least, are living at the poverty or below poverty line.
Yes.
Because the almost 60% of them are making less than $35,000 a year. And then of course, we get these economic drivers and these distortions about these larger businesses moving and going and playing games with communities as being economic drivers and stuff. So I would agree with you about the whole issue about most things being in disarray or the shifting of the landscape. I have lived a fair amount of years, 50 years as a person existing and being in, and I've never seen the land shifting the way these are shifting. But I have seen it in different kinds of capacities, and especially about white flight from inner cities, and then what politics drive that, right? And when people flee, the better education goes into that OCC, which is outer center city, right? So there's an ebb and flow that sometimes occurs from the center city to the outer center city. And then those issues are what's driving them. And then how public education is affected by that ebb and flow, right? The better teachers don't want to work inside center cities. They want to move to these rural areas where these new schools are now in and better benefits and so on and so on. So I think there's a lot of mitigating things that are going on. But the thing that really perplexes me, but that I don't see enough of, is how when these types of major institutions, educational institutions, get affected or they go on the march for whatever demands that they have, is that how the community should be stepping into that space and how significant that symbiotic relationship is about education, how we should educate our young in our communities and things like that. So I think that that's a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
Is that who fills in that gap? In those past when these systems were going on strike and out of schools for a longer period of time, then we have to reorganize the scheduling, and then usually sometimes the education year is shorter than it would have been. So who's really getting the short end of the stick on these kinds of things when you start having to negotiate for better wages as a teacher, really? And so it becomes a real interesting conversation. It gets open.
Yeah, totally. I think who's suffering the most right now, are you talking about like during the strike, right?
Yeah, during those strikes, man.
Is the young people that are living in poverty right now, that their only source of meal was probably school lunch, was probably school breakfast, was
Now
probably
you talk.
snack after school. They probably don't have a caring adult at home, and the only caring adult they probably had was at school. So
how does this get filled in? How do they get the hot lunches? Do they still serve the hot lunches in school?
So PBS is still serving lunches. They sent out, and I noticed I noticed that they're not serving lunches in the more affluent neighborhoods. So they are targeting the neighborhoods that are mostly people living in poverty. So they are providing lunch to those families, and then also I believe there's a lot of organizations who get Sun School money who are opening up their doors during the day at certain hours. The only thing I don't like is that some of them are only doing caseload only, but I think it should be for all. But yeah, so I mean, we are in an interesting situation right now.
Well, I'm here to tell you. So
and the district is saying they don't have the money. So
it always seems to be a feast or famine.
A what?
A feast or a famine.
What's the
A feast or famine, right?
Yeah.
We're high on the pine. So coming out of COVID, seemed like everything was beefed up, reared up,
Yeah.
money was flowing,
Right.
blah blah blah, right? And the minute I seen this whole subversive attack on affirmative action begin to occur, I began to recognize that same old shit was happening again. And it was just a matter of time before whatever seemed to be propping us up as to some delusional reality is that we were heading in the right direction. It becomes a delusion or an illusion at some point because a sleight of hand comes, and then all of a sudden somebody starts talking about budgetary concerns. You know, there's never enough money. But yet the cannabis tax is this tax, is that tax, and they raking in millions and billions of dollars. But it seems like every time it gets to the place to where someone comes and they go, there's a deficiency over here, someone asks the question is, where is that deficiency and who is with? Because rather or not, are we going to prioritize it or not?
Yeah.
You know? So tell me, Cruz, teaching with purpose this year was kind of interesting and kind of exciting. What was the theme and what were you trying to impact this year? What was it that you were trying to convey to the teaching world through Teaching with Purpose this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So this year the theme was advancing the Teaching with Purpose pedagogy. And Teaching with Purpose pedagogy is based around 3 tenets: high expectations, developing relationships, and also relevant content. And I think I want to focus on that relevant content piece because I think that's extremely important because it ties into our conversation even today. So about the economic piece. So here we have economic standards, but I'm asking my kids, are you learning about anything around economics or financial literacy, which is another social studies standard listed on there, and they're not learning any of that information. So so Teaching with Purpose basically is about like finding the deficiencies, finding the different holes that we can pretty much fill in the gap with. So relevant content right now is very important. We now if you look at the 3 tenets, what I just explained, so high expectations. High expectations kind of not only deals with the belief system of teachers, right? The disposition of teachers, of how they perceive our young people, right? Do they think they can learn? Do they have high expectations? Do they believe that they can learn, right? It's that belief system. But also high expectation has to do with, do you have knowledge of what is happening politically? Do you understand different policies and different laws that is affecting your class?
Are you talking students or are you talking teachers? Okay.
Teaching with purpose, yeah. Teachers, administrators, all educators. Are you aware of
current events and current topics?
Yeah, not just current events, current topics, but I would say current legislation, right? I'm talking about legislation, I'm talking about policies and laws that affect our classroom, because one of the things that really I started thinking about this was when I taught the Young Men's Academy at Jefferson High School. I just started noticing different changes that we had to do, and I was like, who was making these type of decisions? Are they in our classroom? Nobody comes into my classroom to see what's going on. Like, why are they making these type of decisions? So it kind of brought that awareness of like, okay, let me start sticking my head out this classroom to see what the hell is going on. Like, who's making these laws? Who's making these type of decisions? So I did that in 2010.
Yeah.
And I brought the conference back in 2011, and I've just been doing it consecutively since then. But that was the year that I started to kind of like peek my head out and try to figure out what was going on. So that's high expectations. The relationship piece is not only just developing relationships with students, right? Which I have. Ironically, it's crazy because I had a full circle moment this year at Teaching with Purpose. So the young man that was filming everything, he was my former 5th grade students, and then my 2 coordinators were also former students of mine as well. So I'm like, wow, I'm looking at Teaching with Purpose in real time.
Isn't that
right?
wonderful?
Like, the relationships that I built with these young people when they were 10, 11 years old, now they're adults, and we still have the relationship, and it is full circle, and they're giving back to the community and making a difference. So I just thought that was a full circle moment. At Teaching with Purpose, I was like, wow, this is it. Like, this is what Teaching with Purpose is. So the theme was very fitting, but advancing Teaching with Purpose pedagogy, advancing those tenets, because that's what we're implementing every day. Relationships also too ties into different assessment practices, right? So I'm not a strong advocate on standardized testing. Now, there's different types of, I'm an advocate for standardized testing in terms of students learning the different targets, objectives, and standards that they're going to be assessed on. But I'm not a fan of just taking a random standardized test and of information, and I'm being tested on things that I didn't learn.
Yeah.
So I'm more advocate for assessment for learning practices, and that deals with relationships. So that means I'm giving a young person the target, right? Like, this is what we're going to focus on. This is the objective. This is the learning objective. This is the learning target. We're going to do all these different things to get to this learning target, and then once we get there, I'm going to assess you. That's best practice. That's assessment for learning, because like the young people see where they're going, they see what they're learning about, and then they're being assessed on that. However, Portland Public Schools have different standardized assessments that they use.
Interesting.
They're right now they're paying millions of dollars for this outside assessment organization. Here's the kicker though, John, is that the type of assessment they're using is called a norm reference assessment. Now, if you do the research on the different types of assessment, I'm sure you're familiar with the eugenics movement, and how in the eugenics movement, how they propagated the notion that blacks were inferior based off of certain tests that they created.
Right.
I.e. the SAT. So the SAT and the ACT, all that is derived from the norm reference test, and it's derived from the whole eugenics movement. So basically, what we're doing is we're using these same forms of tests, and then we're still to this day identifying young people as all they can't learn because they didn't pass this particular standardized test. So we're carrying on this narrative that young people, black people, cannot learn. Right. And it's all derived from this whole eugenics movement of norm reference assessment.
Right.
Thank God our state standardized test is not a norm reference test anymore. It's a multi-tier type of test. However, it's still standardized in terms of young people being assessed on different things that they did not learn in the classroom.
Gotcha. And I think that's the deceptive aspect of education. Yes. And I think that and or suppression of some form. You know, I think that I'm not big for conspiracy theory, but I do understand phenomenon. They call me a phenomenologist. Yes. You know, and that's just a whole lot of content on the table. Yeah. It's something that was centralized, and then no one has ever just decided to make no sense out of it. They just all threw it in this one part of the table and said, oh, it's over there. But what I tend to do is, like yourself, go and look through that stuff to see what content, what significance did it really have, and is there a common thread? Okay, so here we are, man. And so you bring the light formulas for successful living, as I see, and so. What's next? I understand you got a town forum getting ready to come up here, here on Saturday. People need to know about.
Yes, definitely. So this Saturday at 1 o'clock at the old Joe's Place. Some people may know the Joe's Place, depending on how long you lived here in Portland. But it's also used to be called Soul Ladies. But now it's the Center for Equity and Inclusion. It's gonna, the address is 1801 Northeast Alberta. We're doing Teach with Purpose is hosting a town hall. It's called Parent with Purpose Town Hall Series, and our special guest that we're going to have is Senator Luke Frederick. We're going to have a conversation about these different topics. We're going to, number one, talk about why it's a strike. We're going to understand what you can do during the strike. We're going to discuss legislation to change the educational system in terms of standardized testing. And then I have a proposal that I'm going to be pitching. It's using the marijuana tax revenue and increase the state school fund to 50%, earmark those resources to the quality education model. Now, the quality education model is that what we had talked about earlier, and we need to, and you even mentioned that cannabis tax as well. If we increase the state school fund, right now it's at 40%, if we increase that to maybe 55%, and then earmark that, we can definitely have more funding for our schools.
Got you. Man, hey, look, y'all, this is, as usual, Cruz, it's always good to have you stop by the house, you know, man, and shake it up for a little bit, man. And for those out there listening, listen here, I don't know if y'all know it or not, your teachers is out there on strikes and your kids is running around the neighborhood. in the neighborhood, it's a time for you. If y'all don't remember the model where I come from, is when your mama say, look here, you beat him until he get home. If you catch him doing something getting wrong, because when he get home, he gonna get beat again. That was about the old school. But it did exemplify one aspect that one community was one.
Yes.
And that every one of us that was in that community was kids to each other, and that we held each other accountable for what our children and how they developed and how they grew.
Yeah.
So I'm a supporter of that reality. But just remember, y'all, your kids running around there, teachers is trying to figure out how to get it the right way, and Karanja Crews is trying to help them navigate to a solution. So y'all, I appreciate y'all coming out, and welcome again to this episode of Black Beat Podcast, where we're unapologetically black. Follow us on most of your local Black Beat or your podcast stations. We appreciate y'all, and keep on listening, you hear?